Welcome to CARFAX Insiders. It's our podcast series to help you sell more cars and drive more traffic to your service lane. How's that for an opening?
Not bad.
Not bad. Episode number 2, we're on.
We are.
Episode number 2. This is it, number 2.
It's twice as many as we had.
Yeah, exactly. And so we had a great discussion on Lifetime. If you haven't watched that or listened to that, please go back into our library and check that one out. But this one's going to be on CARFAX has the most accident and damage information. I'm sure you have seen it all over the place because we make sure everybody knows.
Who told you that?
We have a lot of information out there, and it is true. We have a ton of information when it comes to accidents. You guys have seen the severity scale. I'm sure you guys have seen the point of impact display or the damage location on CARFAX reports. Just the amount of data that we have on the accident and damage side, but we kind of tricked them in a way on this one. Just a little bit, because we're going to say how to sell more accident vehicles, because we do know that a lot of the inventory out there is starting to include some accident and damage, because inventory is hard to find. We've talked about that several times at CARFAX and even on our, here's a plug, Just the Facts podcast. If you have not checked that out, please do.
At the end of the day, 30% of available inventory has some sort of accident or damage.
30%. And you might say, man, that sounds awfully high. That's a lot of vehicles. But let's take the other number. Let's take 70%. So that's what I want to talk about. And that's why I say we may have tricked them a little bit. We are going to talk about how to sell an accident car. But what about the other 70%, Bob? Because we also have, and I would venture to say, the most service information on history reports that's out there available to customers these days as well. So how does that service side, that car's been well maintained, it's been worked on from a dealership, it's been got regular oil changes, all of that stuff, how does that help a consumer when they're in the buying process or ready to buy a car?
Well, an instant thing happened on the way to the play, right? When you look at the buying public today, almost 70% of that buying public is the millennial generation now, right?
70%.
Almost 70%.
Wow.
Yeah. And they brought to the table a new aspect that was never there before. And that is a major consideration for them is called future cost. What they look at is future cost. Ask any one of your salespeople what the consumer is asking them for today. And they're like, that's a great price. How much is this vehicle going to cost me once I buy it? Have you done this? Have you done that? When's the last time the brakes are changed? How many miles are left on those tires? Does it need the 30,000 miles? Whatever it might be. They bring into the equation future cost, right? That's where things like extended warranties and inspections and certified and all those things come into real play. We have always said here at CARFAX, there's no such thing as a bad vehicle, right? We get the rap of saying bad vehicles.
Well, I think they say more like it's a bad CARFAX.
Well, I'm getting there. A bad CARFAX used to be a branded title. Now a bad CARFAX is anything on the report.
Any blemish, right?
Any blemish
An
whatsoever
open recall,
on the
doesn't
report.
matter. Yeah.
But here's the thing. Consumers do not anticipate used cars being perfect.
Oh, come on. Sure.
Positive. As a matter of fact, when you represent them as perfect, they get a little nervous. Now, no one wants to be embarrassed. But they want to know what the vehicle had been through, what it looked like before you got a hold of it. Right? So when you use things like service history is the number 2 required thing we have because it's the number 2 requested thing we have. Accidents are still scary, so it's still number 1. But because of future costs, the best predictor of the future is the past, right? So when a consumer can see that a vehicle's been well taken care of, especially if it's been taken care of by factory certified mechanics at your dealership its entire life, you know that vehicle its entire life, perception is that vehicle is less likely to have future problems. Now, cars are cars. You take a brand new car, it could break down next week. They're still machines. But the public perception is if it's been well maintained, well taken care of, especially by the best in the business, its future is better than a vehicle that's never been taken care of. And that makes logical sense. If a car owner owned a car, never took care of it, never changed the oil, never did the maintenance, Everyone can see that picture too, right? So why is this is in an accident and damage presentation? Because when you present a vehicle with an accident, there's only two buyers. There's only two. The first one looks at that accident and says, you know what? I'm not going to buy a vehicle with an accident no matter what the dealer says. But you don't lose the customer because they say, you know what? That dealer has 10 more cars kind of like it. I'll learn everything about those cars too. You don't lose the customer. The second customer, and there's only two, looks at it and says, that don't sound that bad to me. And I like the price of the car and I've been looking for this car. Now, when you start adding the elements of it's been well taken care of, we did a full inspection, it's certified, we've known this car its whole life, our certified mechanics have taken care of it, that takes the onus off the accident. So CARFAX adds data every single day to take the onus off the accident, right? Being able to say it had no damage at all, it had very minor damage, all those things, the point of impact, like you mentioned, the severity scale, all that is to help take the onus off an accident, because we know that if a consumer hears that a vehicle's been in an accident, but there's no explanation to it, that used to be the yellow triangle of death, right? And dealers used to hate us for that. So the more detail we give them, the better. But then the more additional detail that set that car apart, which added the value to it, again, takes the onus off of accident and damage information.
Makes complete sense, and I think it's very valuable. There's one piece that I think also fits in here, and that would be accounting for the accident, because we do understand, and I opened up with this, we do understand that you that are listening to us may be stocking inventory that you hadn't a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago.
Should have been.
We understand that part, and we'll talk about that in just a second, because that's my follow-up question to this. But when I talk about accounting for an accident, I'm talking about price. So as we're pricing vehicles, I know that you listening to us would I'm sure you would say you shouldn't have the same price on an accident vehicle than a non-accident vehicle.
Mr. DJ, let me stop you for 1 second.
Okay.
Were you aware that accident vehicles actually sell faster for more money than non-accident?
I know you keep telling me that, and so that is my follow-up question to Bob after we address this part, and that would be the history-based value that CARFAX has, because I'm sure there are folks, and I keep saying I'm sure there are folks that are listening to us. Hopefully we have 2 or 3 people out there listening to us, right?
Not just us
and talking
three.
about that. But I would venture to say a lot of them may not have a full understanding of what history-based value is.
Yeah.
So when I say as part of the accident, they're carrying more stock out there, they have more inventory that has an accident, damage, some blemishes on there. How important is it then to actually use that tool? That would be history-based value as part of their process. To me, I would say 100% of the time, at the very least, they're looking at it because we can account for it. But how does that actually work? I mean, is it different than a Kelley Blue Book, different than a Black Book and NADA guides? Is it different? And if it is, then how would be the best practice to use that on that type of inventory? Does that make sense?
Sure. And here's the thing. We all know dealers that refuse to stock any vehicle with an accident, right? We have those dealers. We also have dealers, the only thing they stock is vehicles with accidents. And they're both very successful, right? So whatever the dealer's comfortable at, that's what the dealer does. We're not telling the dealer what to do or not do. You asked the question about the difference. Every other valuation tool out there, every single one of them, is year, make, model, and miles. Now, you can add a condition report, I guess.
You can add a location maybe.
But here's the thing. Only CARFAX history-based value tool takes into account that vehicle's particular history. So a VIN number is like a fingerprint. There are no such thing as 2 same used vehicles, period. Right? Use any one of those tools. And if you're a dealer out there who buys inventory and plentiful when you're trying to stock your CPO, maybe you bought 10 2-year-old, I don't know, you're a Toyota dealer. So you bought 10 2020 Toyota Camrys with 35,000 miles on them because they became available. You want them for CPO. Every book out there is going to tell you all 10 of them, because they're 2020 Toyota Camry SCs with 35,000 miles on them, is going to be worth the same amount of money. We will give them 10 different figures because there is no such thing as 2 of them being the same. So when you look at the accident, for example, we have the ability to look at the marketplace like all the other tools do. That's what they do. They all do average market. But the difference is we know the history of those cars that sold in the marketplace or got wholesaled in that marketplace. And we know the cause and effect of that vehicle's unique history elements did to the retail valuation or the wholesale valuation. Now, when we are looking at that evaluation, we do not compare it to history elements that are not the same. So we don't compare an accident vehicle with a non-accident vehicle. We do not compare a rental car with a personal owned lease return. We do not compare one owner with multiple owners. When we do our history elements, we make sure the cars that we are evaluating it against in the marketplace have the same history elements. And we'll go as far as we have to find enough of them to give you a real number.
You know, and a lot of times it's just like, well, it's just another pricing tool. It's just another reason for, you know, us to enhance our products, you know, maybe. But this is a real valuable tool. I know we talked about it in our first episode of how history-based value really does stitch everything together.
100%.
And I would go as far to say that you should be taking a look at the history-based value on 100% of your vehicles, especially when you acquire them. Because if you're already in the best practice, which many of you are, of pulling a CARFAX report on every single car that you touch, why wouldn't you then use the history-based value and make sure that you're looking at that on 100% of the vehicles?
Listen, an appraiser's job is to look at a vehicle and know whether it has pluses or minuses to market. That's what an evaluator does. That's why they use paint meters. That's why they run their finger along the fender. That's why they do all that stuff. Does it smell like a dog? Is the interior, you know, all that matters. But here's the point. If all that mattered when you were appraising it and you gave it more or less based on that, why would you not ask more or less when you're retailing it for those very same reasons? And why would you not communicate that to the consumer? Like, everyone's hell-bent on being priced at market and average pricing. In order to hit average pricing, you need to raise the low ones and lower the tall ones. That's what it means to be average, which makes you wrong 2 out of 3 times. Number one complaint by consumers today is they can't tell the difference. Everything's priced the same. Everything's got 27 beautiful photos. Everything called this, and they all list windows and locks and tilt and cruise. That's where history-based value tool comes in. Because when you combine the history-based value tool and the CARFAX report, now you can take and create a listing that sets your vehicle apart and helps you find the right buyer for that vehicle. Now, I mentioned earlier, I was kind of playing with you a little bit about accidents sell faster for more money. Here's the truth. When you have an accident vehicle, you have a piece of the market with a lot less competition on it. You have a piece of the market that you can be probably less than average market, right? So now you can have a low mileage car that was well taken care of below market price. Because why? It got hit in the door? Let the consumer decide if that would stop them from buying the car, or if they'd rather have the great value and the nice car. The only person that's going to know it had that was the buyer after they buy it. No, they're not going to go around saying, hey, I got this nice car, but it was hitting the door at one time. That's not going to happen. So absolutely, dealers should have been stocking these vehicles. We've been trying to teach it for years. But when there's plentiful inventory, why would they? Well, with the lack of inventory today, they're finding themselves having to make those decisions. It's a smart decision. It was back then. It is now. But you have to use the tools. Absolutely use your market pricing tools. You should know what's in the market. You should know where you're at. You should know all those things. But just as importantly, if not more importantly, for your retail opportunity is know what sets your vehicle apart, when you can ask more than market, when you should ask below market, because both are true.
They are. They're both true. And I think that's valuable. So I didn't even have to ask the question to get the answer about how they sell faster and for sometimes more money, but it's really driven by that consumer. We
literally have dealers, that's all they stock, and they sell hundreds and hundreds and hundreds a month. And that's all because they can buy them cheaper, and the consumer really doesn't care the way dealers think they do. And they do a good job marketing them, and the dealer makes a decision, and then the consumer makes a choice. It's how it works.
You know, and one of the things we've learned by having the sheer number of customers that we have and talking to them directly, dealers
30,000 of them.
There's a lot of them, right? And so we have the ability to really find out what's working, what's not working, how it's working, maybe fine tune some things. But part of this really is on carrying the accident vehicles, because we've seen that you just need to tell a story And here's the kicker. And here's the easy part. We've spent so many dollars, thousands and thousands of dollars to find shoppers. Quit that. Find the right buyer. There is the right buyer for every single car. Just about. There may be some exceptions.
A car
but
broken
very
in half
few,
has the right buyer.
And it's about finding the right buyer, right?
Yeah.
So as we wrap things up, I think you have a good, I won't say it's a talk track, but a good discussion point on how you should list these accident vehicles, because I think it's really important, again, to find the right buyer and don't lump them all into the same category just to try to attract 100 shoppers. So how is it, what should they do in a practical sense to leave them with today to really change up their process a little bit when it comes to accident vehicles and how they list them online?
Well, here's the point, and this comes directly from dealers that have found a way to be even more successful than ever before. And that is, the days of driving as much traffic as possible to the dealership are long gone. There's not a dealership out there today that doesn't have less people and less funding and less marketing and less resources and less, they want to spend less on advertising, right? That's why they're more profitable than they ever were before. But here's the point. Traffic is expensive. Going through all them leads takes a lot of personnel, a lot of time, a lot of resources, to come up with a 1-2% return. Those days are gone. So what you need to do now is let the internet do what the internet does best, which is find the right buyer for your vehicle, right? Do you want 100 leads? You want 10 people at the door?
I want 10 people at the door.
Exactly. The only reason you wanted a lead was to get them to your door. Right, but that's why you had a BDC, because you had to staff it. Why? Because you're trying to go through traffic to find buyers. Mm-hmm. Well, guess what? Let the internet find your buyer for you. But the way you do that is you write a quality description. Listen, this always irritates me. There's not a vehicle made today, period, that doesn't have power windows, power locks, tilt, cruise, air conditioning. Why you still put that in your listing when you have it also in 2 other locations on the same exact VDP page? Drives the consumer crazy.
It drives you a little crazy too.
Well, it does, because it's an easy fix.
Yes.
And it's an instant lift. Every dealer that's made the adjustment has found a lift. So here's the thing. Use your history report to make your description. Set that vehicle apart. No one cares that it has windows, locks, tilt, and cruise. Now, if it's a rare option, if it's a highly sought after option, that goes in the description. But other than that, you have to make your car stand out. Who owned it? Was it taken care of? Did you take care of it? Did you sell it brand new? Has it ever been in an accident? If so, what kind of accident was it in? That's what people want to know. Mm-hmm. Because the person that reads the description needs to say, that's the car I'm interested in. Because when they do that, then the price you placed on that car makes sense to them as a value proposition, right? A person that reads the description and understands the price and shows up, that's a car deal unless you screw it up. That's what you should be after as a dealer. And accident vehicles will absolutely draw you buyers and not just traffic, because the person reads the description, understands that value proposition, and shows up. You gave them every reason not to buy the car, and they showed up. There's nothing better than that as a dealer. Nothing better than that.
I agree. Well, I hope you enjoyed this episode of CARFAX Insiders. I know we always do, right? We always do. And one thing we can leave you with in a practical sense is when you're using the history-based value tool to adjust for, to make sense of, to account for that accident, that starts to tell the story by having more detail, as Bob just said, as part of your description, to really understand and give that information to the consumer is going to help them in their decision-making process when they're out there shopping and turn them into a buyer. And that's what we always want to do, right?
Well, we always try and do 2 things for the dealer. What's number one?
Number 1 is help them sell more cars.
And number 2 is drive them to your service department.
Always want to. I hope we did that. We'll see you on the next episode.
See you next time.